The daily vlog started in 2015, I think.
Yeah.
And I was cognizant of this when I was making it, but it's like, I have a daily record of my life. It's like pretty well produced.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Of my whole life.
Yeah.
And I was like, someday I'm gonna look back at this.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be interesting, but I've always been so close to it. Then last week when Elon's rocket fucking exploded or whatever, my buddy texted me, he's like, we gotta go see it next time. Have you ever seen a rocket? Have you guys ever seen a fucking rocket?
In person, yeah.
You have?
Yeah. I grew up in Florida, so we were right near Space Coast.
Life-changing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like when you look at it, there's a fucking human in there.
Yeah.
And I went for the last space shuttle blast off ever. It was like a dream of mine. I grabbed my girlfriend. We drove down there in like a Winnebago and we watched it in 2013.
Yeah.
And I made a movie. It was like the trip where I fell in love with her. And like we're like married now, a bunch of kids and stuff. But I was like playing that back, just trying to find the scene where the rocket blasts off for that moment. And like I watched the whole like 10-minute movie, like sitting there crying. Cause like we're like dating, we're like young, and I was like, oh shit. That thing where I look back at it and I'm able to see my life in such a vivid portrayal, like that's happened.
It's like having a wedding video for every single day for 3 years.
Instead of it being just like a fucking terrible wedding video, it's like an interesting
Or a reminder
thing
of the happiest day of your life. One of those two.
There's a video you put out recently that I was watching. I thought it was very good, very introspective. And something you struggle with, which was the inauthenticity of living through a vlog.
Yeah.
And how that kind of pulled at you at the end of those 800 days where you're like, am I ever present or am I always thinking about the video? And one thing that I thought really separated you from the other people who copied you was, well, one, story, but we can get to that later. You actually understand story. But also authenticity. You are incredibly comfortable talking to a camera. It feels like you're talking to me, and I do not like doing that shit.
I hate it.
I don't know. I for some reason, I don't connect it to it. I don't know what the fuck it is. But when do you start to feel yourself almost doing, is it an impression of yourself? Why do you feel inauthentic?
I don't know, like the vlog particularly, and like uniquely it was about my life. So like every day I would just sort of pull interestingness from my life. And if you start to examine your life from a third person perspective, it's really interesting for a while. Like the place where you go, and I don't mean I live a particularly interesting life. I just mean like I go to this place and get a smoothie. I know the owner. We say what's up.
Yeah.
Like I know I've got friends on. It's like it's interesting. You get to see something, but like that works for like a couple days. You know, you're like all right. Like the next 797 days, you got to come up with something fresh. And like. So like that starts to fade and you start to feel it being repetitive and you get insecure. And those sort of like, those very introspective insecurities really start to build over time. So then you start to seek interestingness elsewhere. And I think this is why we've seen the rise and fall of so many YouTubers. It's like, okay, I need to be more interesting. Like, let me rush towards sensationalism.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's interesting, a car accident. You know, it's interesting, like, anything extreme, like that's, so let me rush towards that. I never wanted to do that, ever. Like, none of that. I did not want to seek sensationalism. So you just start pulling, you start creating, and all of a sudden, yeah, you start to feel a little bit of, you're like playing a caricature of yourself. And that was tough. Like confronting that was tough.
So instead of living your life and then making content about it, you're like, yo, how can I live my life in a way that makes interesting content? And that felt inauthentic to you. Okay.
There were weird, like, unintended consequences, though. I was thinking about this a lot this morning. On my run, particularly this morning, I was so drilled in on this. My wife and I were fighting about something yesterday, and this is what I was thinking about. My wife is the most amazing character on camera because she gives zero fucks. She does not give a shit. And like a lot of like partners and YouTube vlogs are always like, hey, what are you doing? You know, it's a very turned up. And you're like, I've met a lot of people, never met a human that's actually.
This is an inconvenience to her.
She doesn't give a shit. And no matter what,
Yeah.
she'd say something interesting, but please say it again. She's like, you can go fuck yourself. Like, I'm gonna use that. But I remember vividly, like, I needed her so much for those moments that when we'd get in actual fights, I'd be like, can't afford this fight right now. I can't afford this fight right now.
Wow.
And that sounds like a little bit evil and awful, but I think there's another side to it, which is like, when you're married, like, you know, like you get into a fight over fucking bullshit. And if you step away and you're like, you know, if something were to happen, if lightning were to strike tonight, would I give a shit about this, what we're fighting about? Like, no, this is meaningless. It's stupid. Just push it aside. I love her.
Yeah.
And like the vlog in its most virtuous take forced me to do that with her. Like I couldn't let the bullshit fester.
Yeah.
Which sounds virtuous, but I couldn't let the bullshit fester because I needed her to make my fucking video.
Yeah.
But the outcome was the same.
But the outcome was the same. And I think about that now because that thing that I was thinking about that we were fighting about in the like this morning on my run is that I literally like didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher last night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, if I don't want to fucking put them in the dishwasher, I'm gonna put them in the fucking dishwasher. Who the fuck is she? She can put them in the fucking dishwasher. I'm not, you know who pays for the maid? I pay for the maid. I'm not putting them in the fucking
that
dishwasher.
always works.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
pay for it.
Yeah.
That's
She
my
loves hearing
favorite
that.
argument.
Bring that
And if
up.
that doesn't
But
work,
why do they love that so much? What is it about women when you tell them that you
Wives in
provide a
particular.
ceiling? Yeah.
and if that doesn't work, you say, you know what? You're acting like your mother right now. And
Yeah,
that just
yeah,
calms
that's-
her
yeah.
down.
But that just gets my wife so horny
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
consider her as her mom.
It's funny because
Have you ever just called him crazy?
You
That's
and
a good one.
I gotta
That's
use
a good
that
one.
one.
That's a good
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Or just be like, oh, you're on your period.
yeah. And then you just say, calm down.
Calm down.
Calm down.
It's
Calm
fine.
down.
The best
yeah,
one.
You know,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't consider myself like a Casanova, but I know how to speak to women.
Yeah, look
I
at
can
you,
tell.
dude.
I can tell. I gotta try that too. Yeah,
You get
Calm
in
down,
trouble?
you crazy mom-like woman, you.
Period,
That's a
bitch.
good thing.
Yeah, use that.
You can't use the B word.
Oh, no, sorry. That's too far. That's crossing a line. I'm
You
sorry.
monster.
I'm
Why
sorry,
would you
guys.
say that? I'm
Unbelievable.
talking about women we love.
How dare you?
I
Mother
crossed
of
the
my
line.
children.
I crossed the line, dude. I'm sorry.
Instead of couples therapy.
That crazy lunatic's the mother of my children.
She's not a B word. She is not a B
Oh.
word.
The thing is, she's always right.
Yes.
And I am the problem. I
Yes.
acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Instead of couples therapy, just start a vlog, and that will save your marriage.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like there is genuine truth behind that outrageous
Yeah, but you don't
statement.
Wait, hold on. Did you ever give her bad edits because you were annoying?
No. Honestly, it was always the other way around. It's like she would always like, when I would look back at the footage, I would always realize how fucking wrong I was. And I'm like, shit. And I have to like sweeten myself up in the edit. Because she's always right.
Yeah.
She's like a very kind, smart, beautiful, loving woman. I'm like a fucking monster.
So you're doing retakes on green screen? You're like, I love you, babe.
Yeah, different outfit, different day, different everything.
It's a narration.
Always, always.
I'm curious, what kept you away from sensationalism? If all these other YouTubers are going down that track, was it the detachment from the data or the monetization, or was it just a dedication to the art?
You know, it's more just like watching my peers do that and just such fucking disgust. And that's not a judgment on everyone. But like like my little daughter, she's 8 now, she's not so little, but like when she's on YouTube unsupervised, then we have her fucking iPad locked up, but she's smarter than us. You can put all these filters on it and shit. She's figured out all she has to do is sign out of iCloud and all the filters disappear. There's no beating her.
Yeah.
When no one's looking, she's watching these family vlogs. And like, it's the grossest shit you've ever seen. And it's like really yucky. I hate it. And everything's like, wow, what are we gonna do today, guys? And it's like, let's go throw mommy's car in the river. And it's like this fucking just lunacy. And it was so gross that I had this tremendous insecurity that I'd ever get even close, even near that. Because like, make no mistake, like I am a YouTuber, I'm a vlogger, I make videos about myself. They're very self-centered, they're very like self-aggrandizing, like it's me talking to a camera with the like presumption that the world gives a shit about what I think. Like, I don't hide from any of that, but there's still a little thread that like I like to think of myself as like a filmmaker or storyteller. And so it's like I've got that insecurity on one side and that driving like desire to still maintain some of that filmmaker, you know, integrity on the other. And I think it's a needle that sometimes I thread well and other times I don't.